Welcome back to Dev Odyssey, a developer's journey through IT, where I cover tutorials and reviews of IT tools and technology. I am your host, Orst, and today we are finishing off our Introduction to Postman series with Postman Settings. So without further ado, we'll get started and looking at the Postman Settings by clicking the gear or the wrench icon up at the top right and the Settings drop down. So just to zoom in a little bit for a better view. In the settings we have, I believe, is about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 tabs. Most of them don't have that much content to it, but there are a few that do, and those we will cover more a little in depth, while the others are just an easy pass through. So we'll get started here in the general settings here. Under request, we have trim keys and values in request body. That's just trimming any extra white space that's at the end of any of those keys or values in there. Then we have an experimental code gen mode, which is something new that they've recently added. And so if you click on for this, what happens is in your request, there's just at the middle right hand side, you can see there is a code button there. And that actually allows you to view what the code would look like for any of these Postman requests in multiple different languages. So by default, they have generally like curl, they have Python, JavaScript, a few other. However, with this experimental code gen mode, they've vastly expanded that library of different languages. I believe with this, it also includes C#. It includes 2 different Python libraries, a Java library as well, and many more. So it's experimental in the sense that it's still beta, but you can go ahead and click that and it'll help you develop any of the requests that you need to use in those programming languages. SSL certificate verification is basically to check if the certificate of the server that you're going against is a valid signed certificate. Generally, I actually keep this off on my end because at work, where I've dealt with self-signed certificates, that you get that warning page show up in Chrome or Safari. It says, "Hey, it's it's a potentially dangerous site." That's what this correlates to, because it knows that the certificate's self-signed versus signed by a respected identity. So for me, I keep it off because not all of them are signed correctly, and so for the purposes of just getting it working, I leave that off. And the rest are basically very explanatory. So open request in a new tab. Ask before closing unsaved tabs. Language detection, which is just automatic or always JSON for the response body or request body. Then we have a timeout settings, settings for the size of the body to return, and then persisting these variable values automatically. So what this does is that anytime at a certain point, it'll persist your current value in your environment to the current value to the initial value. On the right hand side, we have headers, and headers are also pretty self-explanatory here. So sending the no cache header tells the server to not respond with a cached value, but actually perform the operation. Setting a Postman token header is just a unique Postman token ID, and what this allows you to do on the server backend is to do some debugging or check what requests have come from Postman and see if any of them had some errors. If you need to do some debugging, this will allow you to look in the logs of your server to see what request it was by matching this token and going through there to debug. Then we have retain headers on clicking links, and that's just if you click a link within a request or somewhere else, it'll populate the new request that comes through when clicking that link with those headers. Automatically following redirects, implicitly understood, and then sending anonymous data, for improving Postman. We have our user interface section, where it's just about the size of, the text. We have a 2-pane view. So right now, we have a horizontal pane view where we have the top is a request and bottom we have response. we can make it vertical if we click the on here, where it'll split and put the request side on the left, and it'll put the response side on the right. Some people like it, depends on what screen size you have. Generally, I leave it as default. Then we have showing icons with tab names and variable autocomplete. Then we have our working directory lastly here, which is just showing us where we would save some of our Postman data, such as collections and files, etc. Things that are shared. Next, we have the themes tab, and this is, as you can see, I've been in dark theme for a while since the last few videos. Initially, I was in the light theme, so you could change that here by clicking this, but generally I prefer dark. Here we have shortcuts, so we have, they're like hotkeys. We have tab shortcuts for opening, closing new tabs, etc. Same thing with requests, sending requests, saving requests. A sidebar information, so if we're scrolling through the sidebar, collapsing, selecting items in the sidebar, copy, pasting. Interface as well, so zooming in and zooming out. And then lastly here we have the windows and modals, so a new Postman runner window, a new console window, a new Postman window in itself. So we have two of them, which sometimes personally I like to do in Excel, but same type of example. Doing finds, imports, etc. Here we have our data tab, and the data tab allows us to export or import any data that Postman's collected on us. So let's say you're switching to a new computer or something different and you want to continue working on anything you've been doing within Postman. You can export your data, which you can download all that data that's yours that Postman has collected on you, and then go into another Postman app on another computer, and then import that as well at the bottom here by choosing files. So it's very well easy to understand. Here we have an add-on section, which currently only has one thing called Newman, and Newman is a command line interface for Postman, but more so of a command line runner. So it allows you to run through your collections using command line. This becomes very powerful for doing automation and tasks. And I've used it at work as well, and we'll continue looking at this in the advanced Postman series. Certificates here are for a client-based authorization generally. We have two things we could do, CA certificates in the collection of a PEM file, and then client certificates. So basically CA certificates would be multiple client certificates, and we can select that by putting a PEM file in there. And then for client certificates, if we click to the right here, we can see we can add all the information for a client certificate. So the cert file, key file, the PFX file, and a passphrase just in case you generated one upon creating the certificate. And then just the host for that as well. We'll go ahead and click cancel. And if you want to learn more, and which I do highly recommend, I would click this link here on learning to work with certificates in Postman. A couple last ones here. We have the proxy setting. So this proxy setting is basically like any type of proxy. So it allows you to set a server to be your intermediary for sending a request on your behalf. So if I'm trying to get to an endpoint server and I want to, let's say, generally do some recording or troubleshooting, or even have a buffer in between my client and the server, you can put a proxy in between where this will tell the proxy, or basically send the request off to the proxy and say, hey, continue sending this to the server for me. So it's very useful for troubleshooting outgoing requests to the web or an internal server or anything like that. But generally, proxies are meant to do that, to kind of scrub and check a request before leaving. So here we have our general settings if you're doing a global proxy configuration. And this is specific to Postman. You can set your proxy type, the server, if there's any authorization, and the username and password necessary for it. By default, we have this system proxy on at the bottom. And this is basically saying any proxy that your system is using as a whole, Postman will also continue to use. So if I had a general proxy on my current network, or I would continue to use that proxy through Postman with the system proxy. But if I wanted to use a different one, you could set that here. And last two tabs, we have the update automatically, which you can set to enabled here. and you can check for updates as well if to see if you're on the latest version. And then we just have our about section where we get to see information about Postman's version, what type of Postman, Mac, PC, etc., which you would know, and then any type of social media, documentation, change logging, licensing, etc. And so that about wraps it up for this episode. I really appreciate you guys joining me on this last introduction to Postman series. In the next videos, we're going to look at advanced Postman topics. So that generally includes stuff like monitoring, mocking, advanced scripting, and many other features as well. So if you guys like this video, I ask you to please give it a thumbs up. If you like this type of content, please subscribe to my channel and click the bell for notifications. Thank you guys very much. I look forward to seeing you in the next videos series for Advanced Postman.